Hey everybody, Ramdean and Black with you here in our downtown studios. 185 pounds is the name of the game as Vitor Belfort takes on Kelvin Gastelum. And what was the other one we were talking about?
Oh, Johny Hendricks.
Johny Hendricks.
And Lombard in Halifax.
Announced because Junior Dos Santos and Stefan Struve no longer the main event. JDS, we're not sure if he's going to be a part of that card, but now it's the former Bellator middleweight champion Hector Lombard taking on the former UFC welterweight champion Johny Hendricks at 185 pounds. First things first, I want to talk about Gastelum and Vitor Belfort. I always felt that Vitor Belfort, because of his experience and because of his athletic background and his willingness to do whatever it takes to achieve success in mixed martial arts, he'd be fine for a long time, like Randy Couture, well into his 40s. But after what I saw Kelvin Gastelum do to Tim Kennedy, if you saw the shape that Tim Kennedy was in that fight, remarkable. And then to see Cody Garbrandt do what he did to Dominic Cruz and Yair Rodriguez do what he did to BJ Penn, I just have a feeling that this is what's going to happen moving forward from some of these veterans that have been around a long time, especially given the skill set, the fighting abilities, the experience of the very young Kelvin Gastelum. This guy comes out to assassinate you.
Yeah, Kelvin Gastelum is the real deal, man. Yeah, the real deal. That night you could see it. Now, this is a harder fight for him, no doubt about it, because Kennedy stuck with that 2.0 game plan. We're going to push forward, get to the fence, get him to the ground. Did get to the fence, did get to his back, hamburgered up, you know, the meat in the back a little bit. But then out in the open field, Gastelum can play with him. The difference that Gastelum has to prepare for is Vitor's aggression and ferocious ability to close distance while throwing punches.
Get him underneath, though.
Yes, he's been doing that since, oh man,
forever.
like, what was he, 19 years old?
Exactly.
We'll throw up some footage of him right now, blasting forward behind heavy combinations. So that is something that's hard to prepare for. Gastelum, when he's mentally in shape, when he's mentally ready to go and navigate that, he can beat anybody right now. It's 185 is an intimidating place for a guy 5'9". Johny Hendricks, Kelvin Gastelum. You remember the dirty 30s and the roaring 40s and the swinging 60s? Those guys are the fat 70s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're really 170 pounders. And I prod a little fun because there's a long tradition when you miss weight of being on the receiving end of that in the mixed martial arts world. And Johnny's got it from us, and so has Kelvin Gastelum. But they're brilliant fighters, Gastelum included. Of those four, not just based on age, but based on ceiling, Kelvin Gastelum's the guy who 5 years from now will be talking about. The other three, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, Johny Hendricks, Hector Lombard. Hector Lombard, we know what he's all about. He comes to hurt you every single time, uses that physical stature of his. But Johny Hendricks just hasn't looked great over his last number of fights. It feels like he's just doing this to do this. How does Johny Hendricks reassess things? How does Johny Hendricks improve as a mixed martial arts fighter to not only be the best version of him, but win fights and stay safe in the UFC?
So, John, I would like you to do one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Will you dedicate every second of every day and every aspect of your life to that thing?
I would have to.
You would have to.
I would have to.
And Johny Hendricks did that when he got to the top. And then now it's like, well, I would really go out and like to train with those AKA guys. And I'd do it. But, you know, my wife really needs me. My wife needs me. I got to be close to my kids. You know, if something happens with her, I get that, man. Like work-life balance in any job, whatever it is you do, work-life balance is important. But in most of our jobs, our work-life balance doesn't make the difference between getting brain damage. And when you talk to Hendricks or you observe the choices that he's making as a professional athlete, he's making choices of a mid-level or lower professional athlete, especially in the changing times. And that's just the harsh truth. Brilliant wrestler. We've all seen the heat in his left hand. Mm-hmm. You know, when he goes after it,
you see what he's capable of.
We see what he's capable of. He's been the champion of the world. But you can't have in this. You can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot holding a baby and 1 foot vacuuming the house. As much as we admire that in most jobs, when in regular jobs we hear about our friend, you know, I know you work 50, 60 hours a week and you'll go home to your family and make sure your family's taken care of. You'll make sure that you won't miss your daughter's birthday parties, all those things. But being a top 10 or a top 5 professional athlete is missing those things. Otherwise, we could all do it. You know, why wouldn't we all just go and do these things? It's because only the very highest level of sacrifice can do it. And Johny Hendricks, by his own words, is not doing that right now. So Johny Hendricks should expect to be a bottom of the top 20.
But hasn't he learned a lesson? You look at those last couple of fights, you're getting hurt. Stephen Thompson hurt you. Gastelum hurt you. And unless you're working with the top fighters, don't you expect that these are the results that are going to continue to occur as your life progresses?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is he should expect that. You know, the truth is, if work-life balance is more important to you than striving for the top, expect to be a middling professional fighter. In fact, it's admirable you can reach the level that Johny Hendricks has maintained and prioritize work-life balance instead of the all-encompassing blind striving to be the greatest in the world. Because these young guys, that's what they do. They don't have families, and if they do have families, they say, you won't see me for 8 weeks, I'll try to Skype every second day, and the rest of their mind is in that. I admire a man who would take care of his family like that, who would prioritize life and his life over it, but don't expect to be a top 10 guy and expect to slowly drop lower and lower. If you say, after Thompson beat you, I'd sure like to get out to those AKA guys. They seem great. They've been so supportive. Nope, you don't do it. Then you lose to Gastelum and you get outclassed. You say, oh man, I'd like to do it, but you know, I got a new baby. And those things are beautiful, but your life becomes, as you get into your 30s and these young super athletes are coming up, do I want to be a family man or do I want to be the best in the world? When you're trying to do both, I don't know which one you're doing better. I'm sure he's a great husband and father, but he's become a middling fighter as a result.
But if you're a number 52 top 20 guy in the world and you're in the UFC, and it seems like it might be a difficult thing to try to sort through. Is the right option? Let's go to American Kickboxing Academy. Let's go to American Top Team where Hector Lombard is. Or are you mesmerized by the coach that has brought you up? Because again, we were talking about it.
He left those coaches too.
So that's the thing. Yeah. He's left those coaches. Is the idea to go back to those coaches or try to find somebody like Demetrius Johnson's found, like Conor McGregor has found, like Stipe Miocic has found? Is the idea to find one of those, and does Johny Hendricks believe that he's found one of them? The coaches are telling him, look, we just haven't worked together long enough. Once we work together long enough, things will hit, or is it immediate? You need to go to one of these big gyms.
You know, when you think this out loud a little bit, he's had a rough time. We talked about Woodley saying he's the least respected champion. You know, Hendricks didn't really get his due, and he's been on the wrong end of the fans and the wrong end of the media. I called him a lazy prick once when he didn't make weight. Yeah. But you think about what it would be like to have reached the pinnacle, and now you're uncertain of where it is. You can't put the work you used to put into it. Your life has changed in the structure of your life. You're into your 30s. You're not in the shape you used to be. You're not dominant like you used to be. And to find your way in that.
And tired. A lifetime of wrestling and into mixed martial arts. Like, screw this stuff. Everything hurts.
And to find your way as somebody who's been a champion and find your way to make that work and stay in that career to provide for that family that you're proud of and to stay in the thing, but to be able to do it without that blind drive to be the greatest of all time, it must be a very challenging and nerve-wracking and frightening place. And when you think about it and you're empathetic and you put yourself into a man like this' shoes, you hope that he can just get the last 3 or 4 weeks, have that really healthy, strong feeling, and go in with a mentality that I've beaten better men than Hector Lombard. I know that I have, and I want to do that in Halifax in the main event and turn this whole thing around. And for Hector, he finds himself in a similar place. He is burned as hot as you can burn in the world. And he now finds himself, putting together a few losses in a clump for the first time in his life. And these two guys got to go meet. And somebody turns it around and somebody else keeps it going the wrong way.
Is there a room for Johny Hendricks or Hector Lombard to think themselves as prize fighters, to look at, we were at the top of the division. We've been champions, whether it be in Bellator or the UFC. Now we're there to entertain. We understand we're in the main event. Are we a top 5 guy? Are we a top 10 guy? The goal is for us to go and entertain the crowd. Can fighters focus on that and still kind of only have one foot in it?
Yeah, you hope so. You hope that it isn't changing so rapidly that guys who have sort of earned their spot don't lose it so quick. Whether you're talking about rodeo, or you're talking about monster trucks, or you're talking about any kind of dangerous entertainment spectacle, and in this case sport, there is a place usually for those guys who can, but you're in the getting hurt business too, so you don't know how long you can do it. To really think about it and be empathetic and not just think on to the next fight and look for the next highlight, but to think about the life of guys like this, it would be a real challenging place to be in your life when you've been getting pay-per-view points and accolades and have been on the highest end of celebration, and now you're hoping to turn it around up in Canada against another hungry guy in your spot. It's a tough way to make a living.
185 pounds continues to be one of the most interesting divisions in all of mixed martial arts.